Today I'm going to show you how to take a medical history. Want to learn the art of history taking and improve your consultation skills? You have clicked on the right video. Hi everyone, this is Dr. Erwin Kwun. I'm on a mission to help doctors lead a happy and fulfilling life. Doctor-patient relationship is at the heart of medicine. When a doctor consults a patient, it's crucial that he or she develops and maintains rapport with the patient. You want the conversation to flow naturally between you and the patient. Forging a good doctor-patient relationship is satisfying for both doctor and patient. Some doctors struggle with interpersonal skills. They don't recognize patients' emotion and feeling, and they don't communicate effectively. Poor communication and a lack of empathy cause patient dissatisfaction. Issues with communication and behavior are common causes of complaints to the GMC. Communicating effectively and demonstrating empathy are very important to build doctor-patient relationship. Traditional medical history has focused on the content of history taking without much consideration about the process. I'm sure you're familiar with the traditional medical history format: presenting complaint, history of presenting complaint, past medical history, family history, social history, drug and allergy history, and systems review. The content of history taking in the traditional model is important, but the interaction that takes place between the doctor and the patient is even more important. A robot could gather the information more effectively than a doctor, but it cannot provide the human interaction a doctor can offer. The expression of genuine empathy and sensitivity is what makes a patient feel respected, heard, and understood. Empathy is often confused with sympathy, but they're completely different. Sympathy is feeling of sorrow or pity for someone else's misfortune from your own perspective. Empathy is recognizing and understanding how someone else is feeling as if you were in the other person's shoes. Unlike sympathy, empathy involves a shared emotion and feeling that creates a deep connection. Let me give you a working example. A patient says his dad died a month ago. There are two doctors, Dr. A and Dr. B. Dr. A replies, "I'm sorry to hear that." Dr. B replies, "I hear what you're saying. It's completely natural to feel that way." Which reply communicated empathy? Let me know down in the comment section. Dr. A or Dr. B? You're right if you say Dr. B reply was empathetic. Empathy is when you show the patient that you feel what they're feeling. Dr. A reply was an expression of sympathy, whereas Dr. B's reply was an expression of empathy. In Dr. A's reply, the expression was "I feel for you," whereas in Dr. B's reply, the expression was "I feel with you." That's the difference between sympathy and empathy in a simplistic way. Be careful when you express empathy, because if you're expressing fake empathy, this can backfire. People can read through someone who is not being genuine and does not mean their words. So if you mean something, say it as you mean it. Be genuinely empathetic. Doctors are privileged to get a glimpse in the personal life of patient. It is important to give undivided attention, to listen carefully to what the patient is saying, and acknowledge what is said to build rapport. Active listening is an essential component of effective communication. Patients' problems need to be explored, and their concerns need to be heard and acknowledged. Patients' expectations need to be managed appropriately. There's an art to history taking. We need to recognize the human interaction that takes place. In tennis, there are two players who go back and forth during a rally. Player A shoots a ball in the other player's court and waits for player B to shoot back. When player B receives the ball, he shoots it back. Player A responds and shoots the ball back again. The exchange between both players creates a rally. If player A decides to keep shooting a new ball every time and don't wait for player B to return the ball, the game becomes dysfunctional. Similarly, if you keep asking new questions and don't initiate and maintain a dialogue, exchanging information back and forth with your patient, the consultation turns into a dysfunctional one. This is unhelpful communication and causes dissatisfaction for both patient and doctor. Consultation models have been developed to ensure effective consultation. Various models have been proposed. These include Berne's transactional analysis, Calgary-Cambridge, Neighbor, and Pendleton. If you want to learn more about consultation model, then click the video above. Before you start taking a history, it's important to have some basic information about the patient, the name and date of birth. Confirming the personal identifiers is essential to ensure you're talking to the right person. Introduce yourself and confirm you have the right patient. First impression counts. Be sure to show enthusiasm in your greeting, smile, and be aware of the tone of voice and energy. For example, Dr. A introduces himself to a patient. Hi, my name is Dr. Kwun from the healthcare center. May I confirm your name and date of birth, please? Now, Dr. B introduces himself to a patient. Hi, my name is Dr. Kwun from the health center. May I confirm your name and date of birth, please? Between these two greetings, which one seemed to be more warm and welcoming? I'm sure you will agree that the second greeting was more warm and welcoming. Starting the consultation on the right foot will help you to build rapport with your patient from the get-go. There's usually a reason that causes a patient to consult, and you want to establish what compels somebody to take time out of their day to consult the doctor. This could be because they have a cough, abdominal pain, or feeling depressed. The first question you ask a patient after the introduction is your chance to open the consultation. Avoid saying phrases like, "What brings you here? What's wrong with you?" "What brings you here" might get some clever patients telling you, "I got here by bus, doctor." "What's wrong with you" might sound insensitive. Use an open question to invite the patient to tell their story. For example, you could say, "How can I help you, Mr. Smith? What can we do to help you? How did this cough start?" Once you have asked an open question, listen carefully to what Mr. Smith says. Let the story unfold. Be curious to learn what your patient tells you, and listen actively to what is being said and what is not said. Being present in the consultation is so important. Acknowledge, nod, and facilitate the narrative of a patient. You could say, oh. This will encourage the patient to tell the story. A concept that has been talked about is a golden minute. This is a precious moment in the clinical encounter. In the first minute or so of starting the consultation, let the patient tell their story and listen actively. Don't interrupt the patient. Pay close attention to the story and pick up on cues. The information will help the doctor understand the problem from the patient's perspective. A common pitfall is to interrupt the patient early on due to impatience. For example, if a doctor interrupts Mr. Smith at 20 seconds after the opening question, the flow of the consultation is broken. Mr. Smith doesn't get to express himself freely. The doctor loses an opportunity to hear Mr. Smith's story, which may contain relevant information and cues. So Mr. Smith started his story. "I've had this cough for the past 3 weeks. It started with a sore throat and runny nose, which seems to have gone. I'm bringing a lot of phlegm when I cough. I know it's not COVID as I did a lateral flow test and it came back negative. I bought cough syrup but it hasn't cleared." The impatient doctor interrupts Mr. Smith at this point and asks a question. "Which cough syrup have you used?" By interrupting Mr. Smith at this point, the doctor doesn't hear the remaining part of the story, which is very important. So the patient was about to say to the doctor, "Last time I had a cough, the doctor diagnosed me of pneumonia. I had to be admitted. I feel this cough has gone in my chest, so I was hoping you could give me some antibiotics to clear this cough." Interrupting the flow early make it harder to gather the relevant information during the consultation, as a doctor miss key information about the past medical history of pneumonia, about the fact that the patient is worried that he may have to go to hospital, and the expectation that the patient has about antibiotic. That's why it's important to avoid interrupting the flow of the conversation in the golden moment. Chances are the doctor will have to work harder to gather this information by asking a lot of closed questions. This will take longer than if the doctor did not interrupt the patient earlier. In the beginning, it is useful to ask open questions to gain a general understanding of the issues. Then, the doctor may narrow down to closed questions and focus on specific area in more depth. Paying attention to cues is vital because patients are going to drop cues. These could be verbal or non-verbal cues. Verbal cues include patient tells you specifically they're worried about pneumonia, or the patient tells you work has been stressful. Non-verbal cues include rolling of the eyes, a deep sigh before replying. What do you do with these cues? It's important that you know how to process these cues. Acknowledge the cues. Ask yourself whether this is relevant cues or not relevant. Follow up on the cue straight away if you think that it's important. You address it now. If a cue does not need to be addressed right now, make a note to address the cue in the second half of the consultation. Not all cues are relevant, so you need to be selective in deciding what you're doing with the cues. Otherwise, you might go down a rabbit hole and your history become unfocused. If you want a free PDF that summarizes the art of history taking, click the link down in the description below to download your free copy. It is useful to organize the information you gather in 3 different categories. The first category is a biomedical information. This is the typical traditional model where you're taking the presenting complaint, history of presenting complaint, medical history, past medical history, family history, drug history. Then you've got the psychological aspect. This is helpful because it helps you understand what the patient is thinking, what's in their mind. When you understand the psychological aspect, then you can address a patient's concern. For example, if a patient presents to you with chest pain and is worried that they have a heart attack, if this is not addressed and you're giving them something for reflux, then they may still have this concern and they have an unmet need. The third category is a social context. It's very important that you get some information about the person, whether the patient lives on their own, whether the patient is retired or working. For example, if you're consulting a patient who presents with sore throat, you might think this is not severe. But if the patient tells you that he's a professional singer and has got events to attend, then this will have significant impact on his work. Avoid using formulaic questions. Do you smoke? Do you drink alcohol? This does not really help in your history taking, and you might come across as somebody who is robotic. So try to incorporate your question with the context of the history of the presenting complaint. For example, if you want to know whether the patient smokes, then ask them, I understand that you're worried about this cough. There are things that can increase your risk of developing lung problems. May I ask whether you smoke? By phrasing the question in context with the presenting complaint, then you sound more natural when you're asking the patient about their smoking habit. Let me give you another working example. If you want to know about a patient's home life and the patient presents with back pain, then you may ask the patient, is there anything that you can't do at home due to this back pain? Then the patient starts telling you the impact of the back pain on their home life. By considering the process and marrying it to the content of the history and thinking about how you organize your history taking in terms of biomedical history, psychological aspects, and the social context, you will find that your history taking will improve. If you're interested to learn what do you do with the information you have gathered in history taking and how you can manage your patient, then I recommend you watch the next video. This is a tutorial on clinical management. Take care everybody. Bye-bye.